All right, so I'm going to read you from chapter 9. This is called The Wishbone. This is a chapter about football. We know a little bit about that. It's not really football season yet, but it sort of feels like you're living inside a jockstrap here in this room. So in some ways, it's very, it's in your face. You know, it's like it's burning you in the face. It's like a cinder on your nose. Waiting for Guffman? Anyone? You guys are so illiterate. All right, here we go. It happened one cool November evening with the hiss of fried pork chops and the pedantry of Jeopardy's Alex Trebek wafting down the hall to my room, where I was staring in the mirror at my changing body. It was a glorious thing, this body, and I admired it, its pubescent blubber melting away and hair arriving in secret places with disturbing speed. "You're a man now," I said to the thing in the mirror. I flexed. What power. There was a knock at the door. I jumped onto the bed, covered myself in a pillow, turned my book over, and feigned reading. "Come in." It was Pop, my father. There had been a great rift between us for months, ever since I'd stabbed the dagger of treason into his back by quitting the football team. I had begun to worry that I was no longer a son to him, but a turncoat. Pop had been a football hero, then a coach, then my coach. My quitting was a tragedy, a royal abdication. I might as well have expressed an interest in joining the U.S. men's knitting team. Something had died between us. Then came this knock at the door. "What you doing in there under that pillow, boy?" "Reading." "What about?" It was a slightly lusty Dean Koontz novel about a hermaphrodite whose sons possessed the ability to telekinetically transport themselves through space and time. And so I said, "It's about science." "Neat," he said. I could tell something was wrong, as my father was not generally enthusiastic about science. "I need you to do something," he said. He was also not a big asker of things. "Fetch him old cleats you got and get dressed. We going to Pearl." There was only one thing in Pearl worth going to on a Thursday night, a complex of dirt football fields as flat and red as a Mars plateau. "Why?" I said. "I need you to suit up." He walked out. That was odd. Not because I preferred hermaphroditic literature to football, but because I was in high school and Pop coached a peewee team. Let me say that again. He coached a team full of 10 and 11-year-old fatlings whose soft little necks had trouble holding up a helmet. My neck, along with the rest of me, was fully formed. I was 14. Was this a joke? Perhaps the old man was being funny. And then I remembered, my father did not tell jokes. The horn on the Dodge bellowed. I grabbed my cleats and ran toward the sound. Pop, they said, had been a beast on the grass, a true wonder in athletic contests, despite being as round and thick as a mastodon. They could say this because it was back when they had mastodons. The man had a head like a medicine ball, legs like Doric columns, shoulders like two honey-baked hams on either side of a very wide room. It was generally agreed that he would eventually play ball for Coach Vaught at Ole Miss, or at the very least wrestle bears for a living. Then, during a fateful high school game versus Hernando, he broke one of the more necessary bones in his leg, and just like that, the dream died. And so, since he would not be making any game-winning sacks or game-winning scores, he set himself to making something even better, a little man, just like him, who might fill those cleats and carry the mantle, live the unlived dream. No son of his would have a choice in the matter. The gravity and density of Pop's DNA would be too much to ignore. It took him 3 marriages, but finally he got him a boy. "Hot damn," he said, that long ago day in a hospital just up the road from Graceland. He was excited because he'd seen a pecker. He devoted the next 18 years of his life to raising up the little thing attached to the pecker. The little thing, of course, was me. "It'll make a man out of you," he was always saying. Like the time he told me to saw a deer in half. He handed me a rusty bone saw, old enough to have been used by Grant's siege engineers at Vicksburg. and told me to run it through the dead thing's pelvis. "It'll make a man out of you, boy," he said, handing me the saw. "And don't be sawing through his nuts neither." This is advice I've taken everywhere with me. Don't be sawing through an animal's nuts. Speaking of nuts, that's what Pop was about football. It had everything required to make a boy into a man. Brutality, blood, a concession stand. On the way to Pearl, we spoke little. I had so many questions like, do you really expect me to hit all those children? And have you lost your mind? We powered up the highway in the Dodge, not even a radio station to break the tension. He stared ahead, as he always did, with the frozen gaze one typically associates with Arctic musk oxen. I was worried. I was not a big rule breaker. I did not like the idea of flouting what was clearly league policy about age limits. Some of the boys who played up in Pearl, they were big. I might not stand out too much, but still, what if I was caught? "So," I said. "I got you at fullback," he said, looking straight ahead into the black. "Oh, we run in the wishbone." "Good." I had no idea what the wishbone was. Some kind of a formation, also a salad dressing. I suppose he could sense my wondering because he soon explained that he was expecting only 10 players to show and needed one more or else he'd have to forfeit. I guess I suggested there'd be dozens of teams at the park and that he shouldn't have a problem finding an 11th from another squad, some boy of some eager father who wanted his boy to get more reps in. "Yeah, but as you know the plays," he said. True. I remembered none of the plays. Pop was always doing this, assuming I knew more than I knew about whatever game it was he'd ordered me to play, overestimating my talent, believing his DNA had won the battle with my mother's, and that I was like him in every athletic way, even though history had shown us both otherwise. When I was 6, he mounted a basketball goal in our driveway, believing the angularity and velocity of the sport would at least teach me to juke, which would be of help in football later on. But juking, as well as dribbling and shooting, were somewhat problematic due to my enormous head, bequeathed to me by Pop through the miracle of genetics. He could manage his own enormous head fine, having the adult body to go with it, but I could not, and I worked hard to keep it from hurling toward the ground at dangerous speeds, which is what gravity desires to do to all enormous children's heads. Invariably, one of our family basketball games would end with my feebly attempting some sort of a layup, while Newtonian physics attempted to introduce my skull to the driveway. I would jump and slip and come crashing down headfirst onto the concrete. Mom would shriek and run to my aid, but not Pop. "My boy's got a powerful head," Pop would say. Next, he put me on a baseball team with boys 3 years older than me, hoping I'd rise to the challenge. Mercifully, they put me in right field, a clear signal to all that I was mentally disabled. On the rare occasion when a ball limped my way, I'd hurl it toward the infield and would be as shocked as everyone else to see it flying in the wrong direction toward the heads of children on other fields. The parents shrieked, sought medical help, but not Pop. "The boy's got a powerful arm, don't he?" would say, sirens in the distance. As I got older, I filled out a little, foreshadowing my future girth and power, but still lacked hand-eye coordination, as well as eye-foot, foot, and head-wall coordination. In games of two-hand touch on the regrettably named Smear the Queer, to be sure, I struck people and objects with great frequency. Once, after scoring a touchdown, I broadsided my grandfather's barn and knocked 2 planks loose. Cousins ran inside for something to soak up the blood, but not Pop. "Seemed like you got him a powerful legs, too," he said, while relatives pried me from the me-shaped hole. When I turned 10, Pop announced that I would play football. The time had come. Glory. It was an August afternoon when he took me outside, pulled from his trunk enough football equipment to make a house payment, and told me to put it on so he could hit me. Shoulder pads, Puma cleats, a jockstrap large enough for a Viking warlord. I put it on and he got down opposite. "Say hut, hut," he said. "Why?" "Just say it." Nothing's quite as horrifying as watching your extra-large father for all practical purposes, the Incredible Hulk with a heart condition and a comb over, squat down, look you in the eye, and ask you to ask him to hit you. Hut, hut, I said, and I soon found myself blessed with the gift of backward flight. What are you doing to my baby? Mom said, as I lay there, my nose bleeding, my life force pooling into the dry, sandy ground. That's how a man hits, he said. Pop had never been my coach before. He was safer in the bleachers, telling himself harmless lies about his boy. But coaching, someone could get hurt. Me, for example. We won bowl trophies and whipped many teams across the county. Pop soon became a vaunted member of the fraternity of coaches, a real bootstraps kind of hero. And I am grateful for what he did. It was fun. All the healthy camaraderie, the sleepovers after games, the time spent with my mother in the hospital while suffering from mild brain bleeding. I toughed it out, fought through phalanxes of giant corn-fed children, tried my hardest to do something right. I could barely understand the cryptic metaphors Pop used in his coaching. Eat his lunch, Pop would say from the sidelines. Eat his what? His lunch. What are you talking about? Let me hear some leather, Pop, boy. Leather, I would say. It sounded like something he'd pried out of a dictionary of 19th century hobo slang. You know, he'd say, clapping. None of us was wearing leather as far as I could tell. Should we be? Did he want me to carry some kind of a whip? Take a 2x4 to him, Junior. To who, I'd say? There's 11 of them. Yo daddy crazy, my teammates would say. And I did not disagree. If pictures are worth 1,000 words, the look on my face in team photos of this era says something like, I am uncomfortable and hot. My face is strained and stiff, the countenance of a fatalist who is suffering from a high-fiber diet. I seem to be making private signals to the camera, suggesting my location and how a well-trained team of SEALs might extract me. Over the next 4 years, I tried to quit football approximately 842 times. There was one rough game where a fullback, who seemed way too old for junior high, had abused me. His age, of course, was an assumption of mine based entirely on his lush and rather full mustache. I think he collapsed one of my lungs, I said. Pop, as ever, pretended not to hear. You could have eaten his lunch. I dreamt of being in a terrible car accident and losing the use of my limbs, which I believed would make it easier to quit. During a physical in Jackson, I got the brilliant idea to have a physician sanction my unfitness to play. Our other doctor said I have a heart murmur, I said. I could die. You won't die. But I might die. Not from that. But one day, yes, the doctor said, putting a credentialed hand around my vitals and making me cough. Back at home, I kept trying. It's just, there's so many extracurricular activities I could do, I said. We got to get you a multivitamin and firm you up. Like maybe the Quiz Bowl team, I said. Make a muscle, he said, groping my bicep. With my other arm, I extended an envelope. Did you see this invitation I got to join Mensa? I asked. Men's who? It's for geniuses, Mom said from the kitchen. My baby is a genius. Pop looked toward the sound of dishwater, confused. Your mama's gone crazy, he said. It just seems like maybe I should focus on things besides football, I said. You mean like baseball? Like maybe the chess team. Something inside him turned to ash. You could see it. He stared into the middle distance as though reaching back through memory for some tenuous relationship between chess and balls. Soon I spiraled into a whirl of decadence with the chess and science clubs, learning very different kinds of offensive moves and establishing control groups and reveling in the empirically verifiable company of other disappointing children. Pop and I didn't speak for weeks until that night when he came knocking and told me to find my cleats. We arrived at the Center City complex of Pearl, Mississippi, and I remembered that I did not very much like Pearl, a community best known for its excellent marching bands, violent dogs, and high rates of venereal disease. Their peewee teams were notoriously nasty, unmannered, and good. We didn't know why they had always been so much better and stronger and faster than us, but we suspected it had something to do with having stepfathers who abused them. The only consolation for those of us from outlying rural communities was that they would all soon be in prison. Pop opened his door and got out. It was night. The halogen glow formed a dome around the park, over which moved low gunmetal clouds. A gust of wind blew off Pop's baseball cap, and his hair flap came unmoored and rose to attention. "I got your pads in back," he said, and walked toward the lights. I found all my old gear, the ancient jock straps that smelled of spring meadows. I undressed right there in the grassy glen, preparing to don equipment that I had first worn 4 years earlier, when I was not yet the size of a Viking warlord, as I was now, owing to a strict regimen of Cool Ranch Doritos. I had grown as big as Pop, but not in the right way, not with the muscles. A quart of sweat later, I made a jarring lurch onto the field, like Dr. Frankenstein's hopeful monster duct-taped inside a protective barrier of sofa cushions. My knees refused to flex, and my shoulders had grown too large for the shoulder pads, which now perched atop my clavicles rather than astride them, giving the effect of small and functionless wings sprouting from my neck. I joined my teammates, most of whom seemed too small, stunted even. "Who are you?" a small uniformed boy asked, looking up. "I'm Coach Key's son," I said. "You're big," he said, poking a finger deep into the fatty tissues around my exposed gut. More of the younglings gathered around me, as children are wont to do with Jesus and clowns. "How old are you?" they said. "He's tall as my uncle." "What grade is he in?" "Hey, what grade are you in?" "He ain't got no grade," Pop said, strutting over. "He's homeschooled." It was strange to hear my father lie so imaginatively. "I'm in high school and I have a driver's permit," I wanted to say, but I knew it would blow Pop's cover. Then, during warm-ups, the taunts began. "Ain't he a biggin?" I heard off to my right from the Pearl side. "The biggins is always stupid," another said. "Hey, boy," they said, "I bet you too big even to fit in the short bus." Oh, they howled. The Pearl parents appeared to believe I was slow of speech and had something of a gland problem. "Good luck tonight, hon," a tattooed mother said. "He's about to bust out of that uniform, ain't he?" I said nothing but stared dumbly, which only strengthened their belief in my retardation. I ignored them, tried to be the bigger man. I was the bigger man. Bigger than some of the parents, even. "Grab a knee," Pop said. It was almost time. My teammates looked up to me, and I looked up to Pop, and Pop looked at a point approximately 30 degrees above the horizon, as though he'd sighted a large formation of ducks he wished to murder.